How are we doing, folks? Welcome to Bunker Wednesday. Yeah, again. We have James back for part two,
Afternoon, folks.
and he's got some more goodies for us. Basically going to be talking about the Cold War bits and bobs, air raid sirens and stuff like that. So I have actually got some questions yet again.
That you won't get through. No,
Well,
probably not.
I've got 18 hours more. So let's talk about Cold War sirens, the design and development.
Okay.
So let's have a look here. What types of sirens were introduced in the UK during the Cold War era?
So going back to start of Cold War, there were three sort of main manufacturers. So you had the Carters, which carried on from the Second World War sirens. You had Seeker-Mac, which was making their earliest model back in the 50s, and Gents of Leicester, who also made the World War II ones, did carry on for a while. I think they were probably the first to stop making them. Carter's went on for a while, and we believe possibly they were taken over by Castle Castings. I know in your video you just did recently.
Yeah, London. Yeah,
around London. Yeah,
it was actually on the Google Maps. It was listed as Carter. Carter.
Yeah. I've been back through and looked, and they're definitely both castle models. So, in fact, we've got a bit of a castle here today.
Right. Yeah, we'll have a look at that in a bit.
Yeah, that's just one
lovely
I've got
looking
in
thing
for restoration at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Still a project underway. But yeah. So and then right towards the end, Seeker-Mac and Klaxon sort of did a merge. I think there.
What sort of year was that?
It's possibly 90s. I don't know the exact date on there, but it seems to be right at the end, and that's when Seeker-Mac came to an end of making their sirens. So the hand crank, like the one that you picked up, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All sort of changed over to Klaxon badging, if you like, and they carried on making them and still make them now. But out of the whole lot, Klaxon's the only one still running now. So.
Yeah, you can see the Klaxon sirens and stuff, hand sirens and stuff like that on eBay. Brand new.
Yeah, you can pick them up brand new. So they've now got the sort of anti-reversal gear on them, which is a bit better because the earlier Seeker-Macs, and if you turn the handle the wrong way when they're spinning, had a habit of grinding the gears.
Yeah, I mean, also brake teeth.
That's it.
What is that? It's a cast iron crank, is it, inside? Cogs.
Yeah, I think so.
That's
Could
nasty.
even be aluminium or steel, actually, saying that.
Yeah, well, I've had that one apart.
Yeah.
And I've seen all the teeth are nice.
All the teeth are nice.
So I think the person that had that siren actually looked after it, and he even said in the description, "Don't turn it the wrong way."
Yeah.
So I think it's come from someone who's.
I think a lot of that came from people. They cranked it up and went, "Oh, that's a bit loud. I want to quieten that," and then they try to turn it the other way to stop it, and you
don't want to try and stop the handle when it's going because that'll break your arm.
Yeah, that and it'll destroy your cogs. So just happened to a few of those, unfortunately.
Yeah. There's one on eBay now. Popped up, £589, brand new, still in its crate. That's never been taken out.
Oh, still in its wrapping.
But they've never tried it. They haven't tested it, so it might be seized or. Well, it depends where it was kept. I mean, the crate.
You don't need
brand new too.
Just say.
I know. I start shaking. You know. God, this is a good deal, isn't it? This is a good deal.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Yeah. Were Cold War sirens in the UK different from those used during the Second World War?
Well, as the time moved on, the technology would have improved. As with most things, it was mainly in the sort of motors. So the earlier World War II models would use a lot more cast iron in them, so that on the stators and the motor bodies and things like that. So they weighed a lot more. Obviously, the motor sizes also shrunk the size of the casings over time, and the later Cold War models have got heat fins around the motors, so when they're spinning up, just helps to dissipate.
That's a good way to sort of identify them, isn't it?
Yeah, between if it's smooth body, you're going to be very early Cold War or Second World War sort of.
So they would have used the Second World War ones in the Cold War. Early Cold War.
Yeah, they would have carried on.
So they wouldn't have decommissioned, because it was such a short sort of period.
It was a short period. I think the system was sort of temporarily sort of shut down, sort of the activation system, if you like. But the sirens were still there, and then as the Cold War started to rise, it was reactivated, and that's when obviously later on the WB systems came along. The first generation, I think, in about the 60s, and then the later generation like the ones up here,
Yeah.
the 80s. So, but oh yeah, also so the siren, the actual motor sizes would have shrunk down a bit as they got more compact as technology moved on a bit. But other than that, it was still the same rotor stators needed to make the noise, you know.
Yeah.
So it's mainly sort of upgrades in the motor, if you like, and the materials they were made out of.
So the Second World War, talking about Second World War ones here, they never had heated plates and stuff on them.
They
they did?
Yeah, some of them did have heater plates on installed on. That was probably some of the problem with the cast iron stators that they sort of experienced, was that the hot cold cycle could cause cracking in that cast iron over time, which is why they sort of, on the later Cold War, they'd swapped over to aluminium on the casting of the stators as well.
Right. Why were some sirens mounted on rooftops and others on poles? Was there a strategy behind this?
It would just be they needed the sirens at a certain height above ground in order for the sound to travel as far as it could, especially in urban environments where you've got lots of tall buildings around. So if there wasn't a tall enough building around where they wanted to locate it, that's usually where they'd use a pole. So sort of big 4 meter high poles to get them right up there. But if they had a tall building about which they could have access to, so maybe a council-owned building or something like that.
That's where you get the police stations and
that
fire
sort of
stations,
thing, sort
usually,
of civic buildings. They would just mount on the roof of there because that would give them the height they needed without the cost of the pole and everything else there. So it's usually just depends on location really as to how the sirens were mounted. So
yeah. Let's just talking about warning infrastructure and activation here. How did the UK's 4-minute warning system actually work?
Wow, you've got a really good video on that.
I have.
Yeah. So the handle video you did.
Yeah, that's a very good video. That and the actual system, all done in a box, wasn't it? All figured out and actually worked.
So that actually shows you the stages.
And there's a lot into it. There's a lot about it, isn't there? So that's quite. Check that video out in the description, folks. And we'll move on from that one. Who had the authority to trigger the National Siren Network in a real nuclear threat?
So the final activation would have been down to the police. So it would have been the 250 major police stations where the carrier control points, carrier control equipment was located.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They would do the actual final activation, but they would have to get the warning message through from Strike Command or from the UK WMO. And once they received that, they would be the ones doing the actual final activation, turning the key, pressing the switch, and off they would all go. So it was mainly local police. They also did a lot of the testing. So when they did testing of sirens, they would go out to actual locations and make sure they were actually working. And you had police who actually had war duty officers, war duty responsibilities, should I say, who'd actually be sitting in front of that CCP cabinet watching the old ticks go.
What sort of period of time,
Yeah, so there had to be someone there. So when that alert came,
constantly,
or
was it only in time of threat? Or
I believe there was pretty much someone who had that responsibility most of the time. So especially though in the Rise Up, there would have been someone there.
There's a good video on YouTube actually of that, and there's it's like pictures of like the police. I don't know if you've seen that one, and they're talking about the CCP.
Oh, okay.
And it's like what they do. It's like a training video.
Oh, Obviously there was a few of those in the training instruction manuals as well.
I don't know. Is that the bit there's a British Telecom one as well? I think that might be the one. Can't remember. Yeah. Were there a backup system in place if the CCP failed?
They could always be activated locally via the auto whalers in a cabinet next to them. So there always was that final backup, but that would physically need a person at the siren location to press that switch, and the local auto whaler would only do the siren at that point, so it wouldn't set off the whole towns. There would have to be someone at every siren pressing that button, if you like. So
that's pretty intense, isn't it? Because I mean, it's not like mobile phone folks. Can you get your sirens going?
Yeah, I think by the time they got out there, they'd already known there might have been a problem. Yeah, but they did do rigorous testing, and the later sort of 1980s system also did some automatic testing through the exchange regularly as well. So
Right.
they really did keep on top of making sure all of those cabinets were working, and there was always a second backup cabinet at every police station at a different location. So they had one in the main area, and then if there was a more sort of toughened area like a basement or something like that in a police station, they'd have a backup CCP actually there. So if that one failed, they can immediately go down to that other one and start the sirens from there. So it was quite a foolproof system, if you like, in that respect.
There must be quite a few of these around then. I mean, I know, you know, like Paul's got one, isn't he?
Yeah.
And there's a museum somewhere. I don't know if is it Ireland or something like that. They got two, I think. I don't know, I can't remember.
I think there's a museum in Scotland that's got 2 or 4
Oh,
of
yeah,
them.
might be
Kelvin and Hatch, I think, has got a couple of them.
Have they got a couple now?
Yeah.
we need to go there again. Because
Yeah.
That's the other day, didn't we?
when you're filming, because I filmed one last time, you don't look at nothing.
Yeah, and
Really?
then when you got little wands, you have more listening.
Oh,
to
I
that,
didn't.
aren't
No,
you?
I didn't have that either.
Ah,
They kept saying you need a wand, and then you get to the next stage. You need a wand now.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a little bit intimidated now. But yeah, we go out there again. I think I'll take the wand.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, really soak it up.
But originally there would have been 250 control police stations that had them installed, and everyone had a backup. So that's 500 of them there straight away. And there were some BT training units which had the CCP in as well for training.
So you're talking cities like Canterbury probably would have had one for this area, would it? Or
they would have, I think, in the later Cold War, it was Folkestone police
Oh, was it
station
really?
would have actually have activated Dover's sirens as well, if you like.
What sort of an area did they cover then?
So it was very much done on the sort of exchange regions. I think that's why it was divided up into the 250 sort of around the country, if you like. But so one CCP might have been covering 3 towns, if you like.
Okay.
So that one would activate the siren, all the sirens in those 3 towns simultaneously, if you like. So that was right towards the end of the system.
Mm.
So yeah, so they would have done a lot.
it's amazing to think what the system would have been like if the Cold War carried on to say like early 2000s, wouldn't it? You know what devices they would have come up with.
Sure, there would have been more upgrades to it.
Because you got these things, 1980s or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Cold War was about resilience. Sort of when we go onto the sort of council bunkers, that sort of thing, some of their communication stuff, everything was about doubling up. So even where the CCP worked, had the X path and Y path coming down from the different talking clock circuits.
Mm.
So they had double of everything, and I think that's maybe a lot of what the country doesn't have anymore because they've let all that slide now. So if one system goes,
Yeah.
a whole lot falls.
So back in the days, folks, it was all properly done.
Mm.
You know, you look at this BT equipment stuff and all those tiny little wires, all neatly
Yeah, all
screwed in.
tied in. and-
Yeah, tidy and you know, I don't know how they do it now. You get some of these green boxes down the end of the road. Just what is it, Virgin Media and stuff like that. There's lots of wires in that. You know, it's amazing how they do it. To be honest,
Mm.
all
Yeah,
that
it's
sort
all
of
going
stuff.
over to fibre optic now, so I think the copper wires will soon be a thing of the past.
No, it's unfortunate for the copper thieves. So this is interesting. How were the siren locations chosen during the Cold War in the UK? Though?
So they would have had the leftover locations from the Second World War,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is where they'd originally have started. But as towns and cities expanded, if you like, they would have realised when they did testing, they may have a dead spot over here or over here. So they may have either installed new sirens or sometimes they move siren locations about a bit from their World War II side to a new site.
Mm.
So it was mainly just done on when they actually did the test, there would be people out listening, if you like. So, and sometimes you could look at locations in a town and you think, oh, those two are quite close together. That's strange, but it might all be to do with elevations. There might be a part of the town down at the bottom of the hill here, and suddenly there's a sharp rise in elevation, so they might need 2 sirens quite close together there, if you like. So, it was quite well thought out, if you like.
Because wind and that affects sound, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
if you've got one higher, sound's blowing, it would probably overshoot the
yeah.
ones lower. So yeah, makes sense, doesn't
And
it?
you think towns are always changing, new taller buildings go in and things like that, which might affect.
Because that's going to be after the Second World War. They're going to rebuild.
Yeah, they're going to rebuild. You know, some original siren sites might have been bombed out and the siren destroyed. You know, so I think they had that in Dover with the electricity works, the one that was sat on there, and that was hit by a shell, so they had to move that one. So yeah.
Were major cities like London, Birmingham, or Glasgow more heavily covered? I suppose it would be because they're cities, aren't they?
Yeah, it would all depend on. I think it was anywhere with a population of over. I think it was 3,000. Got an electric siren. So anything below that would have been a hand crank job, if you like, either at the church or the local pub. But once a town got to a certain size and a certain number of people, then an electric siren should have been fitted in that area. And obviously, the bigger towns there are, the more they're going to need just to cover the area, if you like. So, yeah, city like London, there would have been lots and lots there at some points, all across the suburbs, around the city centre. So, to make sure that they covered as much area as possible. So.
Yeah, this is interesting. Were there different types of sirens used for urban versus suburban?
So the only difference may have been a lot of the time the sirens were the same model. There may have been a different setup in the control panels depending on what power supply was available at the location. So there were different types of switching panels to activate them locally. So if they were in an area which had 3-phase available, there's the 415 volt, then they would have used siren switch panel number 1 during the sort of start of the Cold War, and that had a 3-phase contactor in it and was all wired for that. But if they were somewhere a bit more rural, which maybe didn't have 3-phase, only had 240 volt, they could fit a siren switch panel number 3. Yeah, number 3 it was. Yeah, and that had still had a 3-phase contactor, but they had to install additional equipment there, like capacitors and I think it's marked as a condenser, and they would use 240 volt supplies. Run it through a condenser that would change the phase angle of one of them, and use the neutral as well to make a crude 3-phase, if you like, and actually run it. I think it would turn out to be 500 volt by the time they did it, but it was just running off 240 volt supplies, if you like. But it was still a 3-phase siren. It fed at the top of the pole at the end of the day.
But that would have got hot, surely, at that voltage.
No, they're pretty much the voltage is fine. I mean, the heat would. Sometimes they had ratings on these sirens, so if you run them continuously like the all clear signal, they'd have a much longer run time. But when you're doing the attack whale where it starts stopping, they're only rated for about 15 minutes for that. But usually the signals were 60 seconds to 2 minutes anyway, so that wasn't a problem anyway for the sort of heating up of the siren, if you like. So
roughly how many Cold War era sirens still survive in the UK? Off the top of your head.
No. Well, the thing is, some are hidden away and probably not known about. Sometimes local people might know of one hidden away here or there, but some were retained for longer as flood sirens as well. So they're the more likely ones to still survive, or ones that are sort of in awkward areas to get down, if you like. Maybe they just thought, I would just disconnect it and leave it there. But the majority of the system, especially ones on poles, etc., because the pole deteriorates over time, and then you've got a heavy siren sat on top of that above the street, so the council will come along and remove those, So over time, I mean, I think it was 7,000 across the UK at its sort of height, and there's probably nowhere near that number now. And even less, which are actually still functional, which may work as flood warnings or in the sort of industrial chemical plants, that sort of thing. But the street sirens and the majority of the system, there is no attack warning system on the sirens anymore. It's completely,
so it's deactivated,
completely gone. Yeah.
Were sirens regularly tested during the Cold War? Do you remember hearing any?
They were tested for periods. I mean, I was born in 81. So
I was just reading that, it's
so sort of tail end, if you like, and I would have been young until I think it was about 92, 93 the system was shut down. So I don't remember hearing many for much of my childhood.
Well,
occasionally you'd hear the port test.
Yeah, the port one. Yeah, they don't hear that anymore, do you?
I remember that. Port ones.
The port ones. So I think the Western Docks one is shut down and gone, but the Eastern Docks, in actual fact, I was walking along the cliffs the other day, and I actually spotted the one on top of the terminal building there.
Oh, right.
It's right on the very, very top of the terminal control building. You can see the siren.
And that's Cold War one, would you say?
I think it was a Cold War model, obviously, but it's only a private system, if you like, that the port used for.
So they've taken it from somewhere and put it there. Do you reckon?
It may have originally been located there, but it's not connected to any sort of national attack
No.
warning system. They've just got a local activation that they would use on it for port evacuations, that sort of thing, emergencies
Yeah.
down there. So, again, there are still a few retained like that for that sort of purpose on big sites like that, but they're by no means into a big attack warning system, if you like. That part of it's completely gone.
It's quite an interesting one here. Did the general public understand what the sirens meant, especially post 1960s?
I think they probably did. Until
Still
sort
that
of-
generation, isn't it?
Still that generation. I think if they heard them now, they'd probably not have a clue, especially some of the younger generation. They'd just wonder what's.
Just moaning system.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do still think that the siren network is there, and if we got attacked, air raid sirens would go off, but they most certainly won't.
No.
You will get a text message on your phone.
I commented on someone's comment the other day on
Yeah.
YouTube, and they talking about we're getting a text message again soon. Apparently, they're doing another.
Yeah, you get a little
National-
siren wail on your phone, don't you?
Oh, really? Like the.
Well, I suppose a bit like that, yeah. Although when I did get the last one in the last sense, I was one of the people who did get one, and I wasn't that impressed with it really. I thought, well, they could.
No, I turned mine off.
Yeah.
Actually, just while we're on that note, a good ringtone, folks, would be for your text message. Will attack warning red.
Could do. Yeah.
That's it. Oh, something going on
Yeah,
there.
what's that? Yeah, and then people just keep texting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any campaigns to educate people on what to do if the siren sounded? Oh, it's probably just TV, wasn't it, and radio and stuff. Like
You-
that.
Say there would have been a TV ad.
Yeah, I suppose you'd have. In the run up, they always planned to sort of run, protect, and survive on the TV, didn't they? And that sort of thing, which would have said what the signals were, if you like, and I don't think we're as big on it as like the Americans with the old duck and cover, and
I would hate to have lived out there then.
yeah,
I mean,
they had
that's
a lot
full on.
more of it, if you like. I think originally they sort of had protect and survive, but wanted to sort of keep it quiet, didn't they? And they were almost kind of forced to release it sort of in
Right.
the 80s, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the pamphlets.
Yeah, that's it. And there
Was
was
it something to do with the protesters, wasn't it? C and
I
D
think so.
sort of taking the mickey, I think.
Well, I think they'd sort of seen it and thought, have you actually seen the advice in here?
Yeah. I've actually got that book, War Plan UK. I've never read it.
Oh, is it the Duncan Campbell?
Yeah, that's it.
one?
Yeah,
That's,
I've flicked through it. I mean, there's some quite interesting facts
Yeah.
inside that. At the back of it, I've read that
yeah.
saying that no civil defence and stuff like that. There'd be no rescue or nothing like that. All this stuff they're telling you is going to happen. It's just would never have happened. That's what they say, but that's just the book, folks.
Yeah.
If you can read it, we'll find it, have a look at it. But yeah, it's interesting. Do you think people nowadays realise how close the UK come to nuclear war?
I think there was probably a couple of times with, I know certainly false alerts on the American and the Russian systems, wasn't there? So
Yeah,
I think that would have been more of a global war as opposed to just the UK, but
You had that list last time, didn't you?
yeah, I've got a list here. Close call times the world nearly comes to nuclear war sort of style. Cuban Missile Crisis,
yep.
Soviet submarine B-59 incident. The Soviet submarine was depth charged by US ships and it nearly launched its nuclear torpedo.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that would have escalated quickly.
Bear at the fence, false alerts, 1962. A guard triggered a sabotage alert during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Jets were prepared to launch.
That was that sensor or something he set off at an airbase or something.
Intruder. Oh yes, Intruder was. I'd never actually heard about this. The Intruder was. Oh, the Intruder was a bear.
Oh, okay.
So it. The alert was cancelled in time. Bloody hell!
Oh.
It's scary, isn't it? I mean, the
What,
60s.
yeah, what
pretty-
started nuclear war? Oh, it was bad.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the technology back then on those computers and the launch systems and stuff like that, it's scary to think, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, I think the sort of distant early warning systems. They did have problems with them initially, didn't they? With sunlight reflections on the sensors, thinking
Yeah,
there
this
was
is in there
massive
somewhere.
launches, and yeah.
there's quite a few. I mean, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 99. So 1962 to 99, there was 10 close calls with nuclear war. This is Amber Archer, NATO drill 1983. A realistic NATO exercise convinced the USSR it might be a real attack.
That was right. Yeah, I remember reading about it. Was it Able Archer or was that the bomb?
Oh, what did I say?
Amber Archer.
Yeah, Able. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting stuff there.
Yeah, a few times came close, and probably a few times recently, I should imagine, with everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, I'll try not to look at it. I mean,
Yeah.
we probably said about this last time, but what sparked your passion for collecting and researching the UK sirens?
I think it was probably when I first met Paul, if you like, online. As I said, I initially started when I was doing those events for airsofting.
Yeah. I remember you
doing
saying,
the sort of realistic events, if you like, and we needed an air raid siren for one of the things we were doing there, and it just kind of spiraled from that, I suppose.
Yeah,
But,
control, folks. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I think the first time we spoke, I didn't have a siren. Now I've got two.
and it's entirely not my fault.
I've got an air raid siren and a fire siren.
It's going to get worse, isn't it? I think we already know this.
Well, yeah. Especially I thought of a bit of a big one now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we have a look at this down here?
Yes, so I think with this one, because you filmed the castles the other day, for one, there's that name plaque.
Oh yeah.
So we've got the Clitheroe works there up in Lancs, so that's where they were manufactured.
So, there we go.
Yeah. So that's normally on the electrical box on the front. So at the minute I've taken this off, obviously, because that's got to be stripped down and painted. But when I first got this siren, you wouldn't have been able to read that because it was completely covered in grey paint. So I had to remove that paint all the way back to get to the original writing underneath. So
That's come up well, isn't it?
yeah, it's just a little Bakelite paint. In fact, you've probably seen there's still some of the grey on the back.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so that's come off in a minute just because the electrical box has got to be done. So this is the stator and rotor. This is from the later model of the three-phase castle casters. I think it's the same as you saw in Hyde Park, the one that was on
Right,
the
yeah,
belt
yeah,
race.
yeah.
So this is the siren we're looking at there. This is the 12-port, 12-bladed side. So obviously you've got a 10-port and a 12-port on the UK sirens. So the amount of ports around the edge of the stator there, and obviously the blades match as well. So we can pop that out. Ooh. So on this one, you can see here, this is the original colour that it came out of the factory in. So that's a duckhead blue, they called it.
Oh nice.
Yeah, and the grey over the top is a later council job. And there's even, I think, a darker grey there. So you can see it's had a few coats of paint over its life. But they never usually bothered stripping paint down. They just slapped a coat straight on.
I mean,
top
slapping
of
paint on, you would have thought they would have been a bit more sort of careful. Just
yeah,
'cause-
I think they just sort of climbed up maybe a ladder up to the siren with a pot of paint and just slapped paint over everything that they could see. I think was the job that they did. So you can see on this one, usually they've only got 4 bolts, and you can see the factory drilled ones there.
Oh
with
yeah.
the original paint, but you can see re-drilled ones here. So I don't know if at some point this siren either had a replacement motor or something go on
Yeah.
for them need to drill them 4 holes. It's only on the 12-port side, it's not on the 10-port side on their siren, so I'm not quite sure
Oh,
what's happened there, but at some point they've done some engineering work on this one. So usually the heater plate will be bolted on to the front here through these bolts here. You can see over time there's been a bit of rubbing of the rotor just with the red paint that's come off on there.
So what causes a rubbing again? Is that?
So, well, I think we can see on this one, I don't know if we can see in this light, but if we look on the fins, what you can see is paint runs. You can see them actually on the fins there. So I think at some point they've slapped a load of red paint on there, and that's probably what's with these runs. That's probably started to cause that rubbing there when it was running.
Yeah.
But you can see you got the 12-port holes on here, and on the back of these ones, these are the original drill holes from the factory. So this is actually to balance the rotor.
Oh yeah, I remember you
help
saying.
reduce vibration. So they put it on a machine, a bit like your car tyres, I suppose.
Yeah.
At Carter and later on at Castle, they did this balancing by drilling material off the back of the rotor there. So on the 10-port side, they've got a slightly different pattern of drilling. Just
right.
depends on how the casting worked out, if you like.
So how would they find out it needs balancing then?
Machine.
Yeah, I think they put it on machine, and every one I've ever seen has some kind of drilling in. So I think just through, because these are cast aluminium, just through the casting process, there will always be imperfections there.
Mm.
So the weight will never be 100%. So they would always have to do a bit of balancing on them there. So usually this is where the shaft and the motor would come through here. That's a keyway slot. So actually embedded into the motor, there's a little cutout, and there's actually a bit of metal that slots down here, and that keys the rotor to the motor shaft, because otherwise the shaft would just spin freely.
Yeah.
And this would slip, and obviously that's going to cause heat, and it's going to lose power there. So, and then the bolts go on the top and actually hold this keyway in, if you like, there. But it's just a bit of so this would be, I think, the 570 hertz side. I'll just double check that. Yeah, 570 hertz this side,
Right.
12-port side. 10-port side is 475 hertz. So they produce two slightly different tones, and when they go together, they make a sort of minor third note, if you like, and that's what gives the UK siren their specific
thing.
specific sound. Is down to this. So obviously the amount of ports and the amount of blades, and also the size of ports, they all make a difference to what frequency it's going to run at. So you can see how tight a fit that is, and that's deliberate. So you've got a very small gap between the stator and the rotor there. And bear in mind, this, when it's running, they're spinning at 2,850 RPM on these. Wow. So this is going round at some speed. And they keep this gap as little as possible here to keep the air pressure up. So if the more gap there is here, you're going to lose sound pressure, and it will be quieter. So
it's an amazing piece of engineering, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so air is drawn in here, and it's pumped out through here at high speed, and that's what makes the sound. So, yeah. But another good way of telling them apart when you're out looking at them, Castles and Carters, these are flat here, these ports.
Oh, yeah.
So on the Seeker Max and the Klaxons, these are actually drilled in at an angle. So there's a, if you like, a 45-degree slope on the edge of each of these here. Yeah, so that's the initial way to tell them apart when you see them up the top of a pole anyway.
So this one's been restored by yourself?
Yeah, so this one's been fully stripped down now. Nick's job on that is blasting and spraying, getting the original colour mixed up, which would be that duck egg blue, if you like, on that one. And try and find the original red under that sort of repaint as well, if you like. So
yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
So there'll be a video on that?
Yeah, so we'll be going down for blasting. Got my friend's cabinet, so it's going to go down there shortly, hopefully.
Right.
Once I get the next few days off to get on that, because I've been obviously had a few events which I've been setting up for and everything like that, so it's taking a bit of time out doing that. But we'll get that blasted and painted, and once that's done, there'll be a video of it all going back together and getting its first run up as well, if you like, after restoration. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right, thanks very much, folks.
Yeah.
For this week, check out Heritage War Sirens, folks. Get it right this time. Did you see it in Bunker Wednesday? I don't know if you noticed.
Oh, I did. Yeah, yeah. No, I'll let you off.
Yeah, in the description, folks, it does restoring sirens and all that jazz. He's got a Facebook group as well.
Don't forget to check out Paul's as well.
Oh, Paul, yeah. Attic Boy 11.
That's it. Yep.
Which he's got loads of sirens on that. And loads of knowledge, folks. So he has got a Facebook group, isn't he?
He has, but it's for Merlin Heritage.
Merlin Heritage.
Engine.
So any Merlin people out there, check out the description. The links will be there. So see you soon.